the SM Media Podcast Network. Hi folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the Ref's View. I am Scott McPike. It's an absolute pleasure to be your host as always, and we've got a bit of a different show this week because it's not a weekly Premiership kind of chat. There's not a lot of massive decisions because it is kind of Scottish Cup weekend. I think the controversy does go out the window a bit this weekend. I think it's a lot more exciting. There's a lot more kind of games to talk about, a lot more kind of cup upsets in there potentially. I don't really think we've had many, but we will kind of do a bit of kind of chatting about kind of some decisions that have maybe caught our eye over the past couple of days. But before we get into that, we will obviously welcome our two panelists. It's our pleasure as always to welcome first of all Steve Conroy.
Hello, you all right?
All good, and Des Roach as well. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, guys. Always a pleasure.
It's not a normal weekend, obviously, though. We do have to obviously start it with some sad news. We've got a couple of things to talk about. First of all, Friday night. There was obviously the news come through sadly about Denis Law, obviously sadly passed away at the age of 84. Steve, again, like obviously a player who had obviously had his day before I didn't have much knowledge of him. Like I'd obviously just heard stories, seen clips. But one thing I think we can definitely agree on, one of the greatest players Scotland's ever produced and a very, very sad loss to the game.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. I wish I had seen him, not just in his pomp, but I wish I'd just seen him playing. And what always shone out for me is the fact that he spent his whole working life virtually down south. He always wanted to get it up them down there. He was a brilliant footballer. Never forgot where he was from, and he seemed like a really nice man to boot.
Des, obviously, the thing as well, the only Scottish player to ever win the Ballon d'Or, obviously Man United royalty, but as famously as well, and I knew of this story, I didn't know it was as detailed as that, helped put Man United into the second division. I did not know the depth of this story until this weekend.
Yeah, and that's when the whole thing was when he backheeled that goal and he refused to celebrate.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the first time going back from what you see now, players not want to celebrate against their own fans. But no, absolute. I mean, you look at his record. I mean, he played 55 games for Scotland and he scored 30 goals.
Uh-huh.
Right, Kenny Dalglish played, and it's not to denigrate Kenny Dalglish because he's my idol. That's my idol. He played 102 games for Scotland and equalled it. So Denis Law, unbelievable. He broke the British transfer record 3 times.
Yeah.
He broke the British transfer record. He went to Huddersfield to Man City in 1960 for 55 grand. He then went to Torino for 110 grand, and then went to Man United for 115,000 pounds. I mean, who would you compare him with nowadays?
No, he's untouchable. What would he be worth now?
No.
There was a very, very nice tweet from Man United, and again, I urge anybody just to check it out. It was a picture of the statue. Obviously, if you go to Old Trafford, there's a statue, obviously, of as they called it, the United Trinity. It's Best, Charlton, and Law, and it just said reunited again. I just thought that was a kind of lovely touch because, like, those three, and again, like, if anybody like wants to read about kind of historical football content, I would urge anybody to check out stuff about Man United post Munich. Denis Law was a massive part of that rebuild and a massive part of the team that would go on and win the European Cup 10 years after the Munich disaster. Just somebody who I think is just a massive focal point in Scottish football history. Like, again, the only player to win the Ballon d'Or. Like, just the body of work that's there. Like, the one thing as well is I don't think he played in the World Cup. I think he did because he didn't go in 58. I think he was in the squad for 74, but I don't know if he played in it, did he?
I don't think he played, but I think he went.
I just don't think he played.
Yeah, he might have scored 1 or 2 against Zaire.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but again, like you just, again, 30 goals, obviously tied with Kenny Dalglish all-time Scottish record, but a tremendous figure in the.
He was also one of the inaugural players in the English Football Hall of Fame in 2002.
Yes.
So it just shows you how high respect he has in the English Premier League.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Tremendous figure in the game.
His professionalism as well.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the goal he scored for Man City against Man United that put them down. It was still an absolutely outrageous goal that he scored.
Yeah.
Knowing that was going to put his team down, and he didn't shirk from it. He just seemed like a fabulous man. I wish I'd seen him live.
I met him. Sorry, I shook his hand. I met him in Glasgow Airport a number of years ago. My wife and I were flying on holiday, and I seen him, and I just went up and said, "How you doing? Really, really lovely to see you. Hope you're well." But here's a wee quiz question. Which famous football player is named after him?
Denis Laudrup.
Who? Denis Laudrup.
I know I'm getting my names mixed up again. Denis, the Dutchman.
Bergkamp.
Although he spelt his name wrong.
Yes, it was only one N.
Yeah.
And obviously as well, one of the very few Scottish players who went abroad. Obviously went to Italy with Torino.
Yeah.
And again, like obviously had been there a season, came back obviously and had these kind of glory days with Man United. But again, like just a wee kind of note here as well. His total for 10 Serie A goals stood as a record for a Scottish player until Lewis Ferguson surpassed it last season. So a wee bit of kind of modern history, that a wee record that I'd imagine he would have been very proud of, and I think he'd have been probably happy to see broken by an up-and-coming Scottish player. We did have another very sad loss as well today. We're recording this on Sunday night, and we got the news kind of round about kind of early Sunday afternoon. The sad passing of former Aberdeen and Dunfermline manager Jimmy Calderwood. Now, I'd imagine both Steve and Des would have had your kind of dealings with Jimmy, but like we obviously knew Jimmy was unwell for quite some time, and like, it was a very, very sad news when we'd heard that he had become unwell, and obviously very sad today to hear he'd passed away. Steve, just obviously your kind of memories of Jimmy and like the impact he had on the game as well.
I thought he was a fabulous manager for Dunfermline and Aberdeen, and I thought I always loved being on with Jimmy. He could give you dog's abuse, he could give you absolute pelters, but he never shirked from taking it back. And there was never a word said. You could say what you wanted to him, he would say what he wanted to you, and it was taken. It was taken in good spirit. I used to enjoy when he would come in before a game, and it was almost every game, and he would say, Steve, see if we get a foul, I'm going to try this. And he would talk through a manoeuvre with you and say, Jimmy, if you do that, I'm giving you offside. Oh, but it's never offside. And I would go through him. And then when he did it, fair enough, he'd do it during a game and I'd give him offside. And you just kind of stand and look at him. And he would just go, where you go. He was great. I loved being on him.
Yeah, he was obviously somebody else as well who'd went abroad to Holland and kind of built a kind of legacy for himself over there, then came back, as we say, had a great time at Dunfermline, took Aberdeen quite far in Europe as well. Just a tremendous manager, but as well, what you hear kind of stories about him as well, tremendous man.
Well, yeah. Thoroughly enjoyed being on with him. He was never anything other than honest, upfront, and if you deserved a rollicking, he gave you one. But never ever bore grudges. I thought he was fantastic.
Des obviously kind of share those thoughts as well.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. He was always... Jimmy Nick would come in with the team lines and he would tell you, and he's like, right, there's the team lines. And Jimmy would say, right, he's number 19, but he's playing there. And he would give you the formation he's playing. And Jimmy Calderwood, nothing but a lovely man. And as Steve correctly said, he'll give you both barrels for the whole 90 minutes. But see, as soon as you walk off, he'll shake your hand. He's like, all right, son, well done. I'll see you soon. And you're like, of course you will. So, yeah, very, very sad to hear, obviously, two massive losses to the Scottish game. But again, Jimmy Calderwood, yeah, lovely guy. And it was always an entertainment being on a game with him.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, again, somebody like when I was kind of growing up was quite a kind of big part of kind of Scottish football. Like you would obviously see him with Wisdom Fairland teams in Aberdeen. They'd done really well. Went to Kilmarnock and Ross County. Just again, done very very well. I want to just kind of say this as well. I've had a wee look here. Just that he did a thing in Shoot magazine in 1978, and he'd obviously said about away for football, he enjoyed snooker, golf, and badminton, and he named Neil Diamond and Diana Ross as his favourite singers. And I just gave me a wee laugh, just like that. I'd love to interview managers now and kind of ask them things like that because like things like that just sound amazing. But yeah, a tremendous figure in the game as well, and a very sad loss. And our
Yeah.
thoughts are with both families. Because as obviously Scottish Cup weekend, we're not going to go through all 16 games that have kind of taken place. There was a few. We did obviously ask people to send us in some kind of decisions that went over the kind of weekend. We'll start actually with an SPFL game, the decision between Clyde and Edinburgh City that we've obviously commented on social media. Steve, again, like I kind of at first I was like, what is he blue for? But you explained it brilliantly on a message you sent to us, and then obviously you'd put it on Twitter what the kind of the reasoning that they came to that decision. Steve, what was his decision? Why was that goal disallowed?
I have absolutely no idea. It was, and Des always calls me Mr. Mitigation. There is no defence, unfortunately, for this. It was a shambles of our own making. The referee decided to knock off a goal for offside without any intervention from the assistant. He didn't get waived. He didn't get flagged for it. So he thought better of the AR and decided to give an offside, which is bad enough because the assistant got a rollicking from the team official who rightly got a caution. But again, that was an understandable reaction to an appalling decision.
Yeah.
And then they couldn't decide how to restart play. They couldn't decide if it was a free kick, an indirect free kick, a drop ball, and they got that wrong as well. Although in the clip that we saw that we get sent, it didn't show how it actually restarted. It looked as though they were given either a drop ball or a free kick to Edinburgh, which was again wrong. It should have been, because he'd made I'll temper my language, because he'd made such a mistake, it should have been started with a drop ball, an uncontested drop ball to Clyde. It was just an absolute shambles.
And Des, obviously, because it is League Two, it probably wouldn't have got the coverage that it deserves because it is such a bad decision. But that's why I think it's important for like channels like ourselves and like obviously people that are as kind of knowledgeable as you guys to explain things like that because that could have went completely under the radar. And now I think a lot of people have seen it. And I'm not saying I know the referee will obviously probably should feel that he's made a big mistake, but I don't. Again, I know kind of Darren Young reasonably well. I can totally understand his frustration. Now I do think it should have been booked, but that's such a farcical decision that I totally understand why he's went off in one like that.
Oh, agreed completely. I agree. And we all say that you behave like adults and you wouldn't put up with that. None of us would put up with that at your work. But you can understand why he just went nuts because it was just it was just bad. It was bad.
Yeah, it doesn't look very well on the refereeing fraternity when that happens. And also the referee who was in the game, I'm not going to name him because I'm not going to name his shame, but that is a wholly catastrophic incident, and it lasted for about 2 minutes. You can totally agree, Darren Young running up the line, going, "What is going on?"
Yeah,
he's always got to be cautioned for it because obviously you can't do that. But when you actually see the decision given, the referee wasn't even looking in the direction.
That's the thing I don't get. The assistant's there to make that. That's one of the very few things where the assistant has got the jurisdiction, and I don't get why
Absolutely,
he jumps
of
on
course.
that.
And and be honest about it, it was a cracking decision from the AR.
Yeah,
he could have get caught out by the guy retreating, but he didn't. He got it spot on. But if somebody said to us the ref had a brain fart, hopefully hopefully it's a one-off, and this will be one that he'll talk about to his pals in years to come. I hope to God he learns from that.
Steve, can you imagine if it was me or you?
We know what the outcome would be.
Exactly.
And so do most people listening to this.
We got this sent in by quite a few people in terms of the game on Saturday evening between Celtic and Kilmarnock. The Kilmarnock goal was judged to have been allowed and awarded, and there was a few people asking, should it have been allowed because it hit off the Kilmarnock player's arm? Des, what did you think of that?
I'm okay with it. The Kilmarnock player pulls his hands into his body. He's not making himself unnaturally bigger. He's not looking to gain an advantage. The ball struck him. Yeah, I'm absolutely fine with it.
Steve, anything with that? Like, because to me it looked fine. Again, the handball rule is obviously quite controversial as we've seen in England, but it seemed all right to me.
No, I'm absolutely fine. Yeah, there was no offence because, as Des said, he hadn't made himself big, hadn't made himself unnatural. Certainly hit his hand, but he didn't score directly from the handball. He didn't score at all. It just rebounded off him onto somebody else. Yeah, that could have come off his knee, his head, could have been anything because it was a sclaff. That was just one of those things. And unluckily, it came off his arm. But no, there was no offence, so the goal was perfectly valid.
There was one on Friday night. I don't know if you've seen it. The Brecon captain had, it looked a pretty bad tackle on the, is it Kabunga, the guy that scored 2 goals for Hearts? Did you see that?
Yeah, just saw that today. That for me was a red card.
I think it's a red.
That was a
red card.
Yeah, it did look a bad one as well. I think VAR does probably get that.
Oh, aye.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt VAR gets that. What about, again, this has been sent a lot, the second Aberdeen goal at Elgin? A lot of people have been saying, was it over the line, was it not? The angle I've seen from it is probably the same one everybody's seen. It's pretty inconclusive to me.
That's the word I've got written in my notes here. It said ball over the line, inconclusive. And to me, you cannot give a goal if you're guessing. If it's inconclusive, you're hedging your bets, and you can't hedge your bets and take a guess. So for me, no, I certainly wouldn't be giving that.
I know this obviously doesn't impact VAR, right? And I'm going to just ask you this. See with the Scottish Cup, does VAR come into play at some point?
I think only when it goes to Hampden.
Yeah, when it goes to Hampden.
Right, okay.
The home team have got an option to use it, but
right, okay.
not they don't because it costs.
It costs money.
But what happened in that game is the Elgin player was cautioned, obviously coming across and to Callum Scott and giving him verbals, and then he goes and gets a second yellow a couple of minutes later for pulling back. So Elgin have then lost a player and they're down to 10 men.
The issue I've got with that though is that we will get sent something like that every single week at that level and below. So
we're happy to receive it, and we'll give them the happy to receive it.
Oh, but more than happy to try and pass comment on whatever, good or bad.
Yeah, again, that's kind of one. That's probably one of the least that I'm like sympathetic towards the kind of referee, because it's so hard to judge. But as you say, like, you can't. If you're given a goal, you must have the utmost confidence that it's a goal.
Absolutely, you can't guess. So the assumption is that he's either, again, had a brain fart because he's given it, or he has, from whatever angle he was at, he's utterly categorically convinced that ball was over the line. Mm-hmm. I've not seen anything to tell us one way or the other.
Yeah, no, that's the same with me as well. Just inconclusive is the word for that. Falkirk played Wraith today in the Scottish Cup. Obviously, it went to extra time, but there was a penalty given in extra time, and we have had a few messages sent in about how is this different to the goal scoring opportunity that we were saying Alistair Johnson should have been red carded for last week. Des, I'll come to you on this because you and I have had a bit of things come away. Steve kind of survived that maybe more than us two, I would say. But Des, in terms of that, I want to know, is there a difference between that? Because I entirely kind of pass this to you before we go any further. Is there a difference between the two incidents over the past week? Because it's the same referee giving the and he makes the same decision, but it's a different punishment because he gives a yellow for this one and not a yellow last week.
Yeah, well, I think the ball was live at that moment in time. The player's entitled to make that challenge. I'm okay with a yellow. I've got to admit, I'm okay. I'm okay with the yellow for it. Don's deemed it to again be a meaningful challenge. You're getting a penalty. You're a player cautioned. Does it merit a red card? I don't think it merits a red card. It's not a serious foul play. It's not denying an always goal scoring opportunity. It's a foul.
But is the assumption, can he get the shot away? Because I think a lot of people were saying last week, where the one we'd said was a red card. I think it's pretty clear he was going to get the header on it. I think it was pretty clear he was going to connect with that. I'm not sure he is here, and it was the same as the one with Yang last week. I'm not necessarily sure he's going to get that shot away.
Yep.
And that's kind of where I think a lot of people are getting mixed up, like the what about it, as we call it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't look at this one this week and go, he's definitely going to get that shot and goal.
It's not.
Your instinct, we talked about it before, your instinct needs to be, oh, this is in.
Mm-hmm.
But that never crossed, certainly nobody I've spoken to, cross anybody's mind with this one. There wasn't any guarantee in the first place that the attacker was going to get the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And he was heading sideways. He wasn't going straight on, and there was a covering defender. So there wasn't anything obvious. And what we said...
That's the word, obvious. Obvious goal-scoring opportunity.
But
obvious.
There wasn't anything obvious in this at all. So I'm happy with the yellow too.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
And that's the thing as well. And again, we all said it last week. I think a yellow last week would have been fine. I think it would have been okay if that was the punishment. It was just that there was no punishment at all. That's a bit I didn't get. But overall, I think a pretty calm weekend in terms of Scottish Cup. Like, I don't think I think it's always nice when it's the Scottish Cup. Good for like teams like Clydebank as well. Musselburgh went close against Hamilton. Just sides as well getting an opportunity in the Scottish Cup, but kind of no real massive shocks that I can think of. Actually, the one that surprised me the most was St Johnstone beating Motherwell.
Yeah, I think
didn't see that coming.
Yeah, no, didn't see that at all. And Livingston beating Ross County.
Yeah.
The bottom of the Premier and the top of the Championship are much of a muchness.
Mm-hmm.
So no, that I don't think that was even a shock.
Yeah, there's nothing between. If you go between the bottom 4 or 5 teams in the Premier and the top 3, 4 in the Championship, there's nothing between them. Nothing at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But in terms of kind of what we've had this weekend, obviously fairly quiet. Anything comes across though, send it over to the rescue on Twitter. You'll get an opinion, you'll get our thoughts straight away. All that's left for me to do is thank our guests as always. First of all, Steve Conroy.
Cheers.
And to Des Roach as well. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you guys.
And we will see you all next week. Thank you very much.
Cheers.